Hey guys, Bright Lights here, and welcome to another Vanguard deck profile. Today, as you can see, we have Phantom Blaster Dragon and his cross-ride Phantom Blaster Overlord. So this is obviously, as you just saw, the new iteration of Phantom Blaster Dragon with the Break Ride coming out in GBT03. And yeah, it's quite an expensive deck to build in all honesty, and it isn't the strongest, but it is a lot of fun to play, and I would recommend it if you can afford it. So let's get started into the profile. For the starter, I run Full About Brave. He came in the Legend deck. A lot of the cards in this deck will. So his skill is Generation Break 1, Canvas 1, and move him to the Soul. Then you can look for your entire deck for one unit with Blaster in its name, reveal it to your opponent, put it to your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So he's really good at filtering your deck for your Persona copies. Your Persona copies, and really he's a good card. He could be played in like non-Phantom Blaster Overlord decks because it's any blaster, so you can look for Abyss or like his mate if you really want one. So that's cool. Yep, we play that as our starter. Next up, I have a little apology. I couldn't get my hands on a 4th Phantom Blaster Dragon as they are still quite expensive, so ideally you'll play 4, just hide that. So 4 Phantom Blaster Dragons. So his skill is Limit Break 4. When a Shadow Paladin rides him, you can pay the cost of Soul Blast 3. If you do, choose one of your Vanguards and they get plus 10k power. And the red text ability of choose 3 of your rear guards and retire them. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, draw 2 cards. Choose 3 cards from your damage zone and turn them face up. Till end of turn, your opponent cannot call grade 1s or greater from hand to Guardian Circle. So that Break Ride skill is pretty devastating because when you Break Ride and then you discard 1, that's 33, crit 2, and they can't guard using grade 1s or 0. Or grade 1s or higher, sorry. So that's a pretty deadly combo. And his second ability is when he's placed on Vanguard, you can choose one of your rear guards and retire it, and then you can look for a blaster. Same kind of skill as Full Avow, but on your ride. Then you may put it to your hand after showing it to your opponent. And shuffle your deck. So he allows you to, again, set free Persona copies. And, oops. Then we are playing 4 Phantom Blaster Overlords. He's quite an old card, but he's still pretty cool. So his skill is continuous Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. If you don't have another Shadow Paladin unit, or yeah, other than him, then he gets minus 2k, so he'll be 9k. Wait, sorry. If you have a unit that's not a Shadow Paladin, then yeah, he gets minus 2k. But since this is all Shadow Paladin, it doesn't really matter. His next ability, as long as you have Phantom Blaster Dragon in the Soul, he becomes cross-ridden, so gets plus 2k. Then his next skill is Count Blast 3 and Persona Blast. And then when he attacks, you may pay the cost. If you do, he gets plus 10k in crit. His skill is quite costly, but since you're unflipping 3 with Phantom Blaster Dragon already, it's not as bad as it was before. And this deck does unflip a lot, so that's something. Moving on to grade 2s, I am playing 4 Bloodstained Battle Knight Dorrants. So Dorrant's skill is Generation Break 1. During your turn, if you have a Blaster Vanguard, he gets plus 2k. So he's 11k beater by himself, and he also gets the red text ability of when he attacks a Vanguard, if he's being boosted by Claudus, you can unflip a damage. So Claudus, yeah. So these two, they're special boosters, so this would make a 22k column while being boosted with Claudus. So he's quite a good card because he can allow you to keep on using Counterblast for your Persona copies and all that, so I would definitely recommend 4, especially since this deck has no real way of, teetering into grade 2s. They can really teeter into their grade 1s quite well, but grade 2s not so much, so yeah. Next up, I'm playing 3 4 matcha. So matcha's skill is on Rearguard Circle, Generation Break 1, Cannon Blast 1. When she attacks a Vanguard and she is boosted, you may pay the cost. If you do, search for a grade 1 and call it to Rearguard. So that's exactly what I meant by continue into your grade 1s quite easily, because you have matcha like every turn just shoom, searching out your grade 1s. And yeah. Next up, I'm playing 2 original Masquerades. So they're basically when you attack a Vanguard, if you have a Blaster Vanguard, it's plus 2k. He makes some nice columns early on if they're playing chicken. And if you just ride grade 3 first, then you can make a 19k column with this guy. So he's pretty cool that way. Next up, I'm playing the promo card, which is just your 12k beater for Generation Break 1 when he attacks Vanguard. It's not the best, but he's another beater. And, well, you'd like to play 3 of Masquerades, but this guy isn't bad. I mean, this guy, with your Claudius, he still makes a 21k column, so that's always something. That's it for grade 2s. Next up for grade 1s, we're playing 4 Claudius. He's your booster of the deck. So his skill is, it's the same as Dorant, so during a turn, if you have a Blaster Vanguard, he gets plus 2k. Then when you boost a Dorant, that gets another plus 2k. So when you boost a Dorant, that's an 11k boost, on top of Dorant, which is 11, so that's 22. So that's why it's a really big column without any triggers, so definitely recommend playing 4 of, because he's amazing. Next up, we're playing 4 Charon. So Charon skill is choose a grade 3 from your hand and reveal it when he's placed on rear guard. You can look for a grade 3 Blasted Arc and then put it to your hand. But since we're not playing Diablo in this deck, you're not really using this guy. So I might play Diablo, but I don't really like him personally. And his second skill is his second skill is why he's really in this deck. So his second skill is continuous while he's on Rearguard Circle. If you have a Blaster Vanguard and you're retiring units, he counts as 2 units. So when it says retire 3, you can retire 1 Charon and then like this guy, and that counts as 3. So that's pretty good. So to maximize the amount of units you can sacrifice for a lower cost, you play 4. Next up, we're playing 2 Strat Enablers because you don't want to discard your Persona copies for striding, so having these Strat Enablers can help. Next up, we're playing 4 Revenger Perfect Guards. They can be any Perfect Guards. I just prefer non-unflipping ones because this deck already unflips a lot. And second, like I said earlier, there's no real good way to look for beaters. So your beaters are quite precious, so you might have to PG them against the Cross and Laurel decks. But that's just personal preference. You can play on Flipper, you can play Neman, you can play whatever the heck you want. I just personally like the the Protect the Rearguard. Oops, sorry, bumped my tripod. Next up for triggers, we're playing 8 crit. I felt bored when making this deck, so I decided to get a lot of different crits. This way, it's hard for your opponent to guess your crits. Yeah, it just makes it hard for them to guess how many crits you have. I've seen people. Oh, oops, 8 crit. Yep. It makes it hard for people to guess how many crits you have, and I've seen people think I've ran 16 crits and all that. It was quite funny, but you're only running 8 because you already naturally gain crits anyway. Run 4 Howl. They're your draw triggers. They go into the soul and give plus 3k to a unit. These guys are here because in case your starter gets sniped and you can't ride him, you can't use his skill, you don't want to lose your cross ride, so these guys just go into the soul and fix your cross ride. So you don't have to pay the Soul Blast 3 with himself, so you still have your cross ride. You don't really need to draw because you're already drawing with the break ride, but having the draws does help because your beaters. You want to draw your beaters. Next up, for heals, staples. This is a pretty standard trigger lineup, really, but it works for me, and I wouldn't really play too much else. I might consider playing 12 crit, but you know, I don't want to risk losing my cross ride because I couldn't get my starter skill off. Next up for G Zone, I am playing 2 Grim Recruiter. So his skill is when he attacks the Vanguard and he hits, you can set your deck for a grade 1 or less card and call it to Vanguard Circle. Yeah, there's nothing really else to say. He's good pressure card, he's a good tutor. You'll notice, yeah, I'm not playing Swordbreaker or Trumpeter. That's because your soul is too precious to use, like to waste on the, well, not waste on those guys, but to use on those guys. So instead, you're going to be searching out for your Charons and your Claudices instead. So that's why I'm only playing 2. Next up, we're playing 4 Dark Dragon, Phantom Blaster Diablo. So his skill is once per turn you can Combust 1 and Persona Blast. And then if the number of face-up cards in your G-Zone are 2 or more, he gets plus 10k and a crit, and the Retex ability of choose 3 of your rear guards and retire them. When you attack Vanguard and pay the cost, if you do, your opponent has to choose 2 of his or her rear guards and retire them. If he does not retire them, then they cannot call any cards to Guardian Circle. Yes, this version has the mistake with the whole resist thing and auto. They have to retire units. The units have to go to the drop zone before they can actually guard. I've seen a lot of players saying, yeah, I choose my resist unit so it doesn't get retired. No, your resisted unit has to be retired. The unit has to be retired before they can actually guard. So resist does have its weaknesses against Diablo, and I play for Diablo as a finisher because this deck, if you damage check a couple of your Persona copies, it's not as good, and then you'll just use these as strides. And since you have Charon already, you can stride with Diablo easily, and it will just make life easier to finish off the game because Phantom Blaster Overlord by himself isn't exactly strong, even with his Persona copies. It's not the best, so Diablo does help. It does really help. And like I said, this deck does have a few problems finishing the game, so I do play 1 Atmos and 1 Blizzard. So Atmos, when he attacks the Vanguard, plus 10k, when he Combust 1. This one, flip up a copy when he attacks and Combust 1, and you get plus 5k for every card in your G-Zone, that's face up. So these cards are here to help you finish the game because, like I mentioned just then, this deck can have troubles finishing if it can't win the game in that break red turn. So, and you don't want to stall for too long because this deck can deck out. Because you do draw from your break ride, you're filtering a lot, and yeah. So that's it for this deck. Hope you enjoyed watching. I might have some matches up later in the week. No promises. And also, there may be like a lack of videos in the November month because I have exams during then. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.